If we look at 1 Corinthians first, Paul is talking about speaking in tongues, which is something we don't talk about much in the Catholic Church. It was a sign in the early days of the church, and it still does happen, is when people speak in languages that they themselves do not know and languages that may not even exist, as inspired by the Holy Spirit. That's mostly what this chapter is about, and Paul is admonishing people that if they're going to speak in tongues, they should interpret, or someone should interpret what they're saying, because our belief is not just faith, it's faith and reason. And so he wraps it up by saying, "Brethren, do not be children in understanding. However, in malice be babes, but in understanding be mature." Grow up. Use your minds. One of the translations, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your mind. And that's what we're doing here. But let's take a look at some of these other readings, using our minds to try to understand them. Wisdom herself. Wisdom is personified here in Proverbs. Wisdom is a person calling out to people to try to get them to seek her. And she talks about people who don't bother to seek wisdom, but who are merely after their own self-interests. When they become desperate and destruction falls upon them, these people who are opposed to wisdom, she says, "They shall call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me." Why? For that they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. They would none of my counsel. They despised all my reproof. They didn't want me. I didn't force them to come to me. Therefore shall they eat of the fruit of their own way and be filled with their own devices. One of the worst things God can do to us is to let us get what we want. They will be filled with their own devices. They shall eat the fruit of their own way. They will bear the consequences. They will reap what they have sown. And that is the appropriate punishment for them. St. Paul talks about this in the beginning of Romans, that people who deliberately turn their back on the evidence of God's existence, he lets them abandon themselves to whatever sick and perverse desires that are in the cobwebs of their heart. Again, one of the worst things he can do is to let us go. This is what you want? Go for it. See how happy it makes you. But think about this from the gospel. "And when he was departed thence, he went into their synagogue. And behold, there was a man which had his hand withered. And they asked him, saying, Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath days? That they might accuse him. And he said unto them, What man shall there be among you that shall have one sheep, and if it fall into a pit on the Sabbath day, he will not lay hold on it and lift it out? How much better then is a man than a sheep? Wherefore it is lawful to do well on the Sabbath days. Then saith he to the man, Stretch forth thine hand. And he stretched it forth, and it was restored whole like as the other. Then the Pharisees went out and held a council against him, how they might destroy him." Just imagine that. Jesus is going around healing people. And here's a man with a withered hand. And the Pharisees are not interested in the miracle of healing. And it doesn't even mean anything to them when Jesus tells the little mini parable. If you had a sheep on the Sabbath day fall into a pit, would you not drag it out? The Jews were not supposed to perform any kind of work on the Sabbath day. And this is the Sabbath. And the Pharisees are saying healing is a work. And Jesus is saying, you would save an animal. Isn't a man more valuable than an animal? And he heals him. And the Pharisees who do not seek wisdom, and the Pharisees who do not have understanding, they are not babes in malice. They're adults in malice and babes in understanding, the opposite of what Paul suggests. Think of the attitude you'd have to say, oh, he performed a miracle. He healed this man's hand, but he did it on the Sabbath. Let's kill him. Imagine the hardness of heart. Imagine the image of God and of religion you must have to think that the narrow letter of the law is more important than not only the law itself, but then the very life and wholeness of a human being. And yet, people think this way. We can think this way if we let ourselves. Where we major in minors and worry about things that are unimportant without seeing the vast and tremendous gift we've been given. It's right in front of our eyes. Well, these are the people wisdom talks about that have turned away from her. And these are the people that do not use their understanding. They don't even use their eyes. They don't even use their hearts. And God has given them up to the hardness of heart that they have chosen.